ORRIONA, Book 1, Legacy. Chapter 14, Scavengers. Meyn Arkturus Freighter, Deep Space.
The ship knew he was the last. Navigation lights brightened along the corridor as he approached. Systems too damaged to function, but not too damaged to remember. Pressure seals slid aside at the sound of his boots. Around him, what remained of the freighter's awareness found what remained of its purpose and spent itself accordingly. He let it guide him. 20 years in these passageways. He had memorized the sound each deck made underfoot, the particular resistance of every pressurized door, the faint vibration the hull transmitted when the engines ran at full capacity. The familiarity was an act of discipline now, something to stand on. The air was thinning, his armor adjusted without instruction, maintaining an atmosphere his lungs would never know it was providing. He reached for the emergency data panel as he passed it, the neural interface at his temple translating what the network returned.
Network contact established. Archive response corrupted. Atmosphere failing. Navigation lost. Command. No response. Life signs.
Corrupted fragments, cascading failures, a dying system trying to answer a question it had already forgotten.
Manifest of souls. Inaccessible. Archive integrity compromised. The corruption pattern is inconsistent with system failure.
Manifest of souls, inaccessible, nothing. The ship was too far gone for that. But the vault wasn't far, he kept moving, then drifting through the power-dead silence of that distant chamber. Voices.
Holy Mother of the Void! I'm gonna have nightmares.
Shut up, you idiot. Let's get what we need and get out of here.
Meyn slowed his approach and pressed against the wall. Thick darkness pooled in the vault's interior. The power grid had failed there completely. The voices rattled through the room, careless and crude, echoing off walls that should have held only reverent silence.
Picked clean as a centurion's plate after feast day, I tell you. Them fancy mercs got here first, didn't they?
Yeah, the ones with wires coming out of their heads. Some kind of neural link tactical shit.
All that talk about Axrathan treasures, and what do we get? Couple of old books, some smashed up cases, and a bunch of dust.
Ain't our fault the Axrathans hoard sentiment instead of wealth. Whole galaxy says they're sitting on ancient knowledge. Well, turns out wisdom don't vacuum sell.
What about that big rock?
The succession rock? You reckon we missed it?
The heart of Ashara. Meyn's breath slowed to a stop. His fingers instinctively brushed the biometal chest at his thigh and the strap across his shoulder, confirming the items were secured.
Friend, if that was here, we'd have seen it. Something that important don't go hiding in a vacuum book.
Good riddance to it, is what I say. You hear what happened to the last crew that tried claiming Axrathan trinkets? Started seeing things in their sleep. Colors that ain't got names. Whole lot of them walked straight out an airlock 3 days later.
A load of spacer tales, that is.
Tell that to their ship, still drifting somewhere in the frontier. No one set foot on it since. Even Prighton's salvage crews won't touch it, and those bastards strip anything that floats.
A bottle struck the deck and split open, glass scattering across metal plating.
Well, this runs a waste then, unless you want to check the High Priestess's chambers. Might be something left if the drink has given you enough courage.
Not for all the credits in the IMZ, you vacker. You didn't see what happened up there. Rather face a hungry cherub than whatever left those marks in the walls. No offense, Lolo.
A cherub growled before the voices faded into drunken speculation about their next target. Their voices opened something inside him, cold and deep and waiting. Before the wardenhood, before discipline, the place where his first oath was born. His vision narrowed. The corridor faded at its edges until only the 5 scavengers stood in loose formation outside the vault. Their weapons hung carelessly over their shoulders as they laughed and sorted through remains. One knelt beside a body, stripping armor plates. Another pried at a wristlet still attached to a severed arm, cursing as the biometal refused to yield. Meyn's hands closed into fists, his heartbeat slowed. Each pulse grew distant. These men were not warriors, not in any way that mattered. The part of him that might have hesitated, that might have announced himself or offered terms, receded like a tide pulling back from shore. The next motion belonged to someone else, something else. Not the guardian who had served Nienna with patience and devotion, but the weapon she had kept sheathed at her side. He moved forward, silent as the void outside. The first dagger slid out of dimensional stasis, reality bending around its edge as it cut through space itself. It re-emerged and took a scavenger through the base of his skull, the blade moving through an alternate path where resistance didn't exist. Neural functions ceased instantly. No pain, no awareness, there then gone. Meyn shifted toward his next target before the first body fell. The second scavenger flinched, eyes widening as they registered movement where there should have been none. Meyn's dagger cut an arc through the space between heartbeats, re-emerging inside the man's head. His eyes rolled back. He collapsed beside his companion. Behind them, a third scavenger managed a partial shout, his arm reaching for his holster. Not the disciplined call of a trained soldier, the startled yelp of a man who had just realized death stood among them. The sound broke the stillness. Weapons fire erupted, wild, imprecise. Bolts scorched through the dim wreckage in desperate streaks, striking twisted metal and debris. Molten embers scattered into the stale atmosphere. The harsh stench of superheated metal filled the corridor, mingling with the sharp electric smell of discharged pulse rifles. But he was a shadow threading between fire and ruin. His dagger cut upward in a single arc that left a momentary afterimage trailing through space. Flesh, bone, and armor lost cohesion. The scavenger's weapon clattered beside it. His scream began, something primal and raw, then cut short as shock overwhelmed his system. Meyn didn't pause to watch him fall. The Chera, the one they called Lolo, backed away. Matted fur bristling with primal fear. His massive frame trembled as he watched Meyn cut down his companions. Lolo scrambled backward and disappeared into the vault's interior. The fifth had taken cover behind an overturned console, firing in controlled bursts. Meyn didn't move for cover. He walked forward. Plasma bolts struck his armor's personal shield. Light green energy flared against each impact, illuminating his emerald features. His eyes never left the scavenger. The man kept firing. Meyn kept walking.
Personal shield integrity, 56%. 53.
Most of that damage had been sustained defending Nienna. These shots barely registered. The scavenger's expression shifted from determination to horror. His finger froze on the trigger. Around them, the atmosphere grew thinner as the freighter's failing systems surrendered to entropy. Time had become the true enemy now, more dangerous than these desperate thieves. Meyn closed the distance. The scavenger tried to scramble backward. Meyn's hand shot out, wrenching the weapon from the man's grip and hurling it across the corridor. It clattered against the far wall. His other hand closed around the scavenger's throat, lifting him off the deck until his boots kicked uselessly at the empty air. A dagger materialized in Meyn's free hand, solid, real. The scavenger's eyes went wide. His fingers clawed at Meyn's wrist, nails scraping against armor that wouldn't yield. Close enough to smell the sweat and fear, to watch the color drain from his face as comprehension arrived. The blade slid between ribs, clean, quick. The scavenger's breath left him in a rush. His body went rigid, then slack, mouth opening in a silent gasp that would never complete itself. Meyn released his grip. The corpse hit the deck with a heavy thud. He stepped toward the vault's threshold, keeping the dagger solid in his grip. Blood dripped from its edge to spatter against the deck plating. The second dagger phased in and out of existence around him, materializing near his shoulder, vanishing, reappearing at his hip, gone again, reality unable to hold it steady. More voices inside, panicked, pleading.
Mercy, Warden, mercy.
Shut up!
Then he saw her. Sierra. Sierra lay at the vault's entrance, her body twisted at an unnatural angle. She had dressed in the High Handmaiden's vestment, the one worn only in the presence of the High Priestess herself. Deep violet silk marked with Nienna's personal sigil embroidered across the chest in silver thread. Each stitch a declaration of unwavering allegiance. The fabric was torn and stained dark now, but the symbol remained visible, defiant, unbroken. One hand stretched toward the vault as if she'd been trying to reach something or someone when death found her. Her eyes stared at nothing, her face frozen in an expression of terror that would never fade. She had served Nienna for 200 years, had braided the High Priestess's hair each morning with songs passed down through generations, had laughed at Meyn's awkward attempts to navigate court politics, never letting him take himself too seriously. She'd left his favorite pastries on his bed when training sessions ran too long without food, a habit she'd never once let him outgrow, had covered for him during meditation when exhaustion won, had been the first to notice when something troubled him, appearing at his side with tea and pointed questions he couldn't deflect. She'd been the one to find him when the diplomatic fleet departed Polaria 7. 17 years old and learning for the first time that a heart could break in ways grief had never taught him. She'd sat with him in silence until he was ready to speak. She'd never called him by his title, just Meyn or Little Shadow when she was feeling particularly insufferable, even as he'd protested he was taller than her now. The last time he'd seen her alive, she'd been arranging flowers in Nienna's meditation chamber, humming a melody he'd heard 1,000 mornings. She'd looked up as he passed, rolled her eyes at his formal posture, and tossed a blossom at his head. Now she lay broken on blood-soaked deck plating, discarded like refuse. That melody echoed in his mind, unbidden. Meyn's vision expanded beyond its narrow focus. The corridor flooded back, the bodies, the blood, the desecration. Not as tactical obstacles, but as lives ended. His chest constricted. The air felt thinner than the failing life support could account for. From inside the vault, the voices continued. Terrified men begging for mercy they didn't deserve. Men who had stripped the dead and violated sacred spaces and laughed while doing it. But Sarah's face stared up at him, and he couldn't look away. She deserved better than this, they all had. He knelt beside her. He positioned one of her hands over her abdomen and laid the other atop it. The Kasranith. Complete. He remained there for a breath. 2. His throat tight with words he'd never spoken. Gratitude for pastries left where he'd find them, unasked and unfailing. For a companionship that had settled more than once into the shape of an older sister he told himself he'd never had. For sitting with him when he'd been broken. For refusing to let the abyss claim him completely. The melody she'd hummed that last morning echoed in his mind, a song he'd never hear again. His gaze fell to her throat. It was bare. The biometal necklace all handmaidens wore, torn away, stolen. He rose. As he crossed the threshold, he found the remaining scavengers had already surrendered. Weapons discarded, scrambling to their knees with hands raised in desperate submission. Her necklace. Meyn's voice cut through the silence. The handmaiden outside, one of you took it. They stared at him, frozen. Return it. He said each word deep in conviction. A long moment passed. The emergency lighting cast their shadows long across the violated vault. Sacred texts and artifacts lay pulverized beneath their boots. Finally, one of them, a thin man with a frontier-scarred face, fumbled at his belt pouch, fingers shaking. Sierra's biometal necklace emerged slowly, its delicate links catching the dim light. He held it out. Meyn took it, the metal pooling into his grasp. A faint tremor pulsed through the material, then a pull. It recognized him, wanted to share what it carried.
Little shadow.
Memories woven into its structure, centuries of Sierra's life pressed into delicate links.
Sierra, you will be High Handmaiden.
You give too much to the High Priestess. Come home. Visit us.
These are dangerous times, Sierra. You must be careful.
Not now. He pushed back gently and the necklace stilled. The connection faded, leaving only inert metal. He closed his fingers around it and slipped it into a compartment on his armor. The metal settled against his chest, next to Nienna's letter and brooch. When he rose, his gaze found the Scavengers. They had gone still. Ancient texts and relics cluttered their hands, things they had no right to touch. The first one pressed his face low against the deck, submission written in every line of his body.
Please, mercy!
The oldest human flattened his forehead against the plating, weathered hands splayed wide.
We'll return everything.
Yes, promise.
Meyn let the silence hold, let his dominance settle over them as a weight before phasing his tesseract daggers out of existence with a soft rush of collapsing space. The Scavengers sagged with relief so profound it was almost audible. 5 in total remained, but one stood apart from the rest, helmeted, silent, his attention locked on the figure. Take off your helmet. No response.
Tank's shy, see?
One of the humans raised his head slightly from his bow, deep scars imprinted across his face.
Always keeps his helmet on.
The armored figure didn't move. Meyn opened and closed his hand, the motion slow and deliberate. A single tesseract dagger rematerialized, its edge vibrating with the deep resonance of reality warping. The other 4 Scavengers scrambled backward until their spines hit the vault's walls. Hands raised in surrender.
Tank!
A tendril-haired alien's voice came out rough.
Just take it off, yeah?
By the long hunt, Drifter. Take it off.
The rumble came from the Chera. Lolo was easily twice the mass of the humans.
Lolo has seen this warden kill 4 in 4 seconds. Lolo does math. Math says cooperate.
Meyn stepped forward. 4 seconds, 4 corpses and 1 Chera who chose correctly. I'm curious which category you belong in. The 5th figure reached up, slow. The seals opened with a faint hiss. Metal dragging against sweat, damp skin. The helmet lifted away, uncovering short, dark hair and medium complexion, human, with a face that had no business being here. Too clean, too unblemished, handsome. The eldest human made a sound of surprise.
That ain't Tank, Warden. He ain't one of us. You fucking imposter, how long you been playing this game?
The scarred one lunged forward. The young man lifted his hands in mock surrender, grinning.
About 4 months. You lot really don't pay attention, do you?
4 months?
Scarred fingers grabbed him by the collar.
We even celebrated Tank's birthday 2 weeks back.
Yeah, well, I would be absolutely bonkers mad if I turned down free drinks and a dancer. Though she wasn't really my type.
His eyes shifted meaningfully toward Meyn.
I prefer a different aesthetic entirely.
We spent credits on that.
Alright, well, consider it payment for services rendered. I was the one to crack that Velturian security grid last month.
Oh, come
Services
on.
Oh, you gotta be back and kidding us, you filthy drifter!
The vault erupted into chaotic outrage, Scavengers pushing and shoving. Meyn watched the dynamics, learning a bit about each. While they argued, his gaze swept the vault's interior. Sacred pedestals stood empty. Archival cases lay broken, but his attention fixed on the central alcove, the one that should have held the heart of Ashara. Empty. He turned back to the Scavengers. These weren't the raiders who had taken it, they were opportunists, vultures. But the distinction felt meaningless when he could still hear their laughter echoing off sacred walls, while his kin lay violated and forgotten in the corridors. He sent one of his tesseract daggers into the space, the dimensional ripple intentionally exaggerated. The group fell silent. The abyss screamed at him to finish what he'd started, but Sierra's presence from the corridor pulled him back. anchoring him to the discipline Nienna had spent 20 years teaching. His armor's interface still held the data from the emergency panel he'd accessed earlier.
No viable Axrathan escape pods remain in detectable range. However, an unidentified vessel signature is currently utilizing IMZ Standardized Docking Port 7. The craft's construction is rudimentary, but functional.
No Axrathan escape pods remained. The Scavengers vessel represented the only functional exit from the dying freighter. The ship's status reading suggested it required a crew to operate, multiple hands for a vessel jury rigged from salvaged components. He could pilot it, but not alone, not safely. Meyn stepped forward, his gaze finding the Chera who had retreated into the vault's shadows. Lolo. The massive alien stiffened, but he didn't retreat further. Your ship will take me to Axrathan Outpost Zell, along with what you have gathered here. In exchange, you leave this vessel with a story of rescue rather than theft, and avoid spending the remainder of your lives in a Galactic Council prison. Understanding settled across the group. The imposter spoke slowly, testing the narrative.
Okay. I think I get what you're offering, handsome. We simply found you, pulled you out of the wreckage.
Exactly. His gaze moved between them. The alternative is considerably less favorable. The group studied Meyn with open curiosity, as if trying to solve equations they couldn't quite balance. Lolo's deep rumble cut through the tension.
Lolo understands. Warden needs crew. Crew needs to live.
His claws flexed.
Deal is acceptable.
The imposter's face shifted into something approaching respect.
Yeah, I can work with that.
The others gathered their scattered treasures with shaking hands. Lolo's claws scraped against deck plating as he scooped up archival data crystals. They moved through the corridors in relative silence, the scavengers keeping their distance, weapons holstered, eyes darting back, moving between Meyn and their treacherous companion. The imposter fell into step beside him, closer than necessary, testing the boundaries of personal space. His armor was cleaner, better maintained than the others. Meyn's gaze slid over, brief, assessing. He tolerated the proximity long enough to check the personal shield rating displayed on the man's armor. Then their eyes met, shoulders squared, weight shifted back. The man understood the boundary breach and stepped a half-meter away. Meyn let the concession stand. What's your real name?
It can be whatever you want it to be, Warden.
The imposter's mouth curved, easy and deliberate. Meyn held his gaze flat and unimpressed until the smile faltered.
Chandler, it's Chandler.
Ahead of them, the scavengers erupted.
His name is Chandler.
Chandler!
Who cares? What happened to Tank?
Yeah!
Filthy Drifter probably shot him.
Their voices splintered into accusatory bickering. The noise formed a wall around Meyn and Chandler as they walked.
They really aren't the worst group you could have spared,
Chandler said as Meyn glanced at him.
They're idiots, don't get me wrong. Loud, careless, irreverent. But they actually look after each other. Just in their own dysfunctional way.
Do you consider yourself one of them?
That's a really clever way of asking if I consider myself an idiot.
Chandler's smile changed, genuine now, beneath the charm.
I'm still figuring that out.
He studied Meyn.
You know, it's not every day a drifter meets a warden.
Meyn didn't respond. Silence filled the space between them. Chandler's posture shifted, his weight redistributing.
The frontier is difficult. Picking through wreckage wasn't exactly what I imagined my life would be.
I thought I vería sin Correa, Meyn said quietly. Chandler's eyebrows lifted.
Axrathans always have something poetic prepared. But let me take a swing at it, yeah? Something about the universe responding to will.
The drifter understood more than most. The river flows where stones allow, Meyn translated, his tone dry. Chandler's easy charm faded back into contemplation. They walked several paces without speaking.
You know, I've been letting the current carry me for a while now. Taking whatever job doesn't ask too many questions. But wreckage gets old. You, though, that could be...
He left the suggestion unfinished. Our arrangement concludes at Outpost Zell. I'd suggest you take time to consider more sustainable career prospects. A quiet laugh escaped.
Career advice from a warden. That's a first.
His expression hardened, humor giving way to severity.
Though whatever happened here,
He gestured at the dying corridors around them.
I don't think the galaxy that gave you that advice exists anymore.
His stride didn't falter, but the words held weight in the thinning air between them. The temperature dropped. Pressure changed against Meyn's skin, incremental but definite. The life support had failed further in this section as they progressed toward the docked vessel. The Scavengers fumbled with emergency masks. The scarred human cursed as his filter cartridge refused to seal properly.
Vacuum junk!
Another swore as his mask's intake valve stuck, taking 3 attempts before it finally engaged. Chandler's eyes met Meyn's, a wink, then his helmet snapped with a pneumatic hiss. In stark contrast, Meyn's armor adjusted without fanfare. Internal systems cycled automatically, maintaining ideal atmospheric conditions with no visible exertion. They rounded a corner toward the ship's docking point. Mid-stride, Meyn halted. The air had changed. A distortion he recognized from Wardenhood training. The same principle that powered his Tesseract daggers, the manipulation of space itself, had twisted into an aberration. Reality tore. A Shekolth warrior phased from dimensional camouflage. Fresh wounds highlighted on the rippling chitin as reality closed back around it. The wristlets answered before Meyn's mind caught up. Heat blooming under his skin, the biometal reaching back through every hand that had ever worn it. Other Wardens felt this only as instinct, a nudge in the right direction. For Meyn it arrived fast and wordless. Primary war combat that wasn't his. Ancestral Wardens facing the shimmer of a dimensional pocket a heartbeat before it broke open. And the energy weapon that followed. Warden after Warden, the same fight ending the same way. Then the biometal showed him a memory where it didn't. He felt that one land. Daggers held back instead of thrown. Their pockets open wide enough to catch the blow instead of delivering one. The tendril-haired scavenger never saw it coming. His chest collapsed inward, vaporized by a burst of plasma. Smoke curling from a wound already cauterized shut. His body hit the deck with a heavy, final thud, smoke rising from a wound that had sealed itself even as it killed. Adrenaline hit Meyn's bloodstream. Axrathan bioenhancers flooded his system. The scavengers stumbled backward, survival instinct pulling them from the threat.
Run, you idiots!
Meyn moved forward into it. His personal shield flaring while his daggers stayed close with their pocket open, catching what the shield didn't.
Energy spike detected from Shekolth shoulder mount.
The neural link interface to the ship's systems tried to warn him. The shoulder mount tracked his advance and fired. Impact indicators flared across his vision as his shield dispersed the energy.
53, 51, 49.
His hands opened and closed, both Tesseract daggers emerging. Space compressed along their edges. A dimensional disturbance rippling outward as he prepared to strike. The Shekolth's shoulder-mounted weapon recalibrated, the barrel segmented and split, transforming from a single aperture into a honeycomb pattern of smaller chambers. The creature had adapted, abandoning large strikes he could deflect. Thousands of microbolts saturated the air between them, converting the atmosphere into raw energy. The honeycomb spread found him before he could break line of sight. A direct hit that overwhelmed his shield in one blinding flare and dropped it to nothing. Meyn dove behind collapsed debris.
Warning, personal shield has been nullified. Unable to regenerate.
Through the gaps in the wreckage, he watched the Shekolth advance. Unhurried. Certain. The confidence of something that already knew the outcome.